Hello, welcome to the podcast. I am your host, John Cartwright, and today we're going to start off with episode 1. It's the top 4 things that elite athletes have over normal people. So you may have heard the phrase that, within performance and sport, that it's 90% psychology and 10% the how-to. And I can quite honestly say that in my own experience of working with elite athletes as well as elite business people, that really does ring true. If I look at my own journey with this performance and how I came to work with people around this, I was always sort of the talented sports person that kind of went to any new sport and could kind of pick it up quite quickly. I even went and I remember catching up with an uncle recently, and he's like, you'll pick it up, you're a natural. And sort of, you're a natural, you're talented. That was really well regarded from where I was from in New Zealand. And then as you kind of get older, all of a sudden the work has to come in. And as I got on in my career and I started to get to the higher levels of sport, all of a sudden I came up to being really kind of the average person amongst better athletes. And then I was always perceiving that they're just more talented than me, or they've just got something that I don't have. And so then I kind of started this obsession with what do these people have that I don't have? I must be missing something athletically. And then as I got to spend a little bit more time around these people, I really got to see it's all the way they're looking at the world. And then my obsession then became looking at successful people and how to figure out what do they have that other people don't have. And the rabbit hole gets quite deep once you get into this area. And I definitely have gone down the rabbit hole on this one. You know, we have these expectations in society where you're in school and you're marked for how good you are. You're sort of placed in this ranking and you sort of find your position. And you have this world that gets created. I am this. I am at this level. This is what my capability is. When you start to deal with these elite people, you can see that the story that they make up and that world, that internal world, is much different to other people. So when we look at these 4 things that these elite athletes have, I've broken that down into 4 areas. So number 1, they realize their words shape their reality. Now, what do I mean by that? Probably the best example I could give you that is an example of someone who didn't have their world shaped in the right way and then could change it so that we can see an example of that it's possible to change would be with Mike Tyson, and in particular with his mentor, Cus D'Amato. If you look at Mike Tyson's journey, growing up in a terrible neighborhood, under terrible circumstances, it wasn't until he got into having a tutor that started, Mike Tyson's spoken quite openly about this, where he's effectively been brainwashed by his mentor. And he was essentially brainwashed into being a conqueror. And Mike Tyson, everybody has his opinions, and as he's gone on, people realize the wisdom that he has, that he used to study all the conquerors of old. And what do they have that he didn't have? In the meantime, he had this mentor telling him, you're the greatest that's ever lived, to the point where he believed it. His world was reshaped. His language around himself was totally changed. And then once that mentor was gone, you obviously saw kind of the wheels fall off his career. I guess you would say it wouldn't be being offensive to him to say that that's where the wheels kind of fell off. Then you look at someone like Tiger Woods, and Tiger Woods' father used to follow him around the golf course, and this kind of, legend has it that used to say quite negative language to him so that Tiger could believe that it's his words that matter. No matter what you say to me, I'm in control of my own destiny. And most people don't see that. Most people are at the effect of other people's words. So how this relates to you in your own life, it's really important to, first, that you're in control of how your world has been shaped. What are the words that you say to yourself? If I said to you, tell me a little bit about yourself, and your first words like, hey, I'm okay at this, or I'm not really that good at that, and I'm not that, that's just, I'm weak at that, I'm strong at that. All of that's real. Those words are shaping your reality. And if I tried to convince you of anything else, I won't be able to convince you of it, because for you, it's the truth. It's so important that you realize that you cannot just go back and change those subconscious pathways that have been established. But if you can recognize it, that these programs were made up, they're not really real. then you can add new ones. We know that the brain has neuroplasticity, and then you can introduce new conversations. And just purely understanding what words am I saying to myself on a consistent basis and being deliberate about what your new words are, that can reshape your reality. It can reshape the way that the lens of which you're seeing the world through. Number two, the second one that athletes have that normal people don't, is if they tell themselves that they're going to do something, they do it. Now, I always speak about, in my kind of house of potential model, in terms of trying to set yourself up to win, the foundation is always your word. And it's your word with yourself that's the most important thing. And so what do I mean by that? If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, it's a mini little loss along the way. If you can consistently be your word, and it's the little things that stack up. You know, it might be as simple for you in your life going, hey, I get out of bed at this time, or I said I'm going to be there on this time. I had this to-do list and I got everything checked off my entire day. It might not seem like a lot, but all of a sudden, you are starting to know yourself as your word. So when you start to say, hey, I'm going to do this, all of a sudden, you know, that you're not in your own way. You know, you look at, if we went into, say, a healthcare situation, how many people do you know that get told that they've got 6 months to live? And that's by an authority that, you know, has experience around like how long these diseases take to kill people. How many stories have you heard? I got told I had 6 months to live and they're living 10 years later. What's going on there? Is it just that they got lucky with the disease? Or did they get lucky with things? Or is it the way that they are looking at things like, I'm going to beat this, or that's not going to be me? And if they draw that line in the sand, if they're an individual that has been able to back themselves through their lives, they're kind of not betting against themselves. You're like, yeah, just count me out. Try and say that I'm going to die in 6 months. Just watch what happens. You can't say that without having some sort of evidence in your life that that's who you've been in the past. I'll give you the best story that I've ever heard around this. I've got examples from my own personal life, but I'd rather go to the ones that are most well known so people can relate to it. And the story that I always think about, it was with Kobe Bryant and an up and coming player that was Jay Williams. Now, Jay was kind of the next biggest thing on the scene, you know, and Kobe Bryant was sort of probably at the pinnacle of his career. Jay Williams was playing for the Chicago Bulls, and they were in town to play the Lakers. Jay Williams asked for some extra shoot-around time in the afternoon before the game. As he came in to train, he saw Kobe Bryant working out down the other end. And Kobe Bryant was already in a sweat. He was already had been in there for a good half an hour at least. Jay goes in and he, shoots his shots, does his pre-game warm-up, goes through his routine. So Jay heads down his end. He goes and gets his shots up, gets his whole session in. He looks back down the other end. Kobe Bryant's still working out. He's like, gee whiz, as he packs up to leave, he's like, man, what is this guy doing? Why is he working out like this? Anyway, the end of the game comes that evening. Lakers win. Kobe Bryant drops 40 points on Jay Williams. Jay said, I've got to go up and ask this guy. Heads up to Kobe Bryant and says, do you do that all the time? Like, you just shoot it. How come you work out for so long before a game? He said, I don't. He goes, well, what do you mean? He goes, I just heard you were coming into the gym. I just want to let you know that you will never, ever outwork me. And he walked off. Now, to me, there's so many layers in that story. There's about Kobe Bryant's work ethic. The two parts to that story is, the first one is Kobe Bryant knows himself as his word. He knows if he does the work and he outworks every other individual, he's already kind of won as he turns up for a game. The second part to that is he gets to live in that guy's head rent-free because every time he's training now, he can't help but think about Kobe Bryant. It's absolutely kind of genius level that if you said to Kobe Bryant, you're just talented. He just, obviously Kobe Bryant's passed away now, so we can't ask him this question. But if you'd said to him, hey, is it all just about talent? What do you think his answer would be? It'll be doing the work consistently over a long enough period of time so that you know yourself as your word. And when you know yourself as your word, you can say at the end of the game, give me the damn ball, I'm going to make the shot. Of course you're not in the way. Of course you're not in the way. You've earned the right to have a go at it. And that's what it's all about. Then I'd look at another example. If we look at the other end of the spectrum and we use Conor McGregor as an example, I did a post about this a while ago. There was a great little snippet of an interview where he talked about in one of the fights that he was unsuccessful in the training camp. There was all the little things that added up. And he just has a great little rant about like, I said to myself that I'd get up at this time and I didn't get up. I said I would train at this time and I didn't train at this time. I said I won't eat this and I was eating it. I ate that, as he would say it. And all of these things just added up. And it's when it comes game time and you're up against another killer, it's very hard for you to say, hey, I'm going to win this and then follow through. If you look earlier in his career, he was like, the Mystic Mac. He could predict what round he was going to knock somebody out. He had that Muhammad Ali-esque sort of way about him where he knew his word and he could back it up. And then to look at that fall from grace, he could see the answers, but now there's a different motivation, like once you've had all that money and success, sometimes it's a little bit hard to go back to being your word because you've got way more distractions. So let's go on to number 3. So these elite athletes and successful businessmen, it carries over to business as well. They never ask themselves the question, what if I lose? And the best story I've ever heard around this one was the example of the All Blacks in 2011. And I remember reading about this story because it was published before the World Cup. And I thought, man, they're going to win the World Cup. And I should have backed myself and put on a decent bet. But growing up in New Zealand, we've kind of got the tall poppy syndrome. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of like if you poke your head up too high, people try and cut it off. So we've got all these people walking around in New Zealand trying to be who can be more humble than the other person, and then who can kind of hide it as much as possible, their success. And so the All Blacks kind of had this title as sort of these chokers. They would dominate people for 4 years, and then they would get to the World Cup and, get labeled as these chokers. And then there was this chat one day that Gilbert Enoka, who was looking after the team in terms of their mental skills, everyone was sitting around in the changing room and just training wasn't going well. Just the whole camp didn't have a good feel. So essentially they went around the room, said, hey, there's an elephant in the room. What's going on? We need to have a chat about this. What if we lose this thing? And everyone kind of had this sigh of relief. And everyone one by one went round, what if we lose this? And it was kind of like, hey, we're at home. Like there's this added pressure, where we might stuff this up. This is such a great opportunity. And one by one, they kind of went around the room and just explained what was at stake for them. And then the simple thing was, well, what if we win? So one by one, everyone went back around the room and explained what if they win? Wow, we would win at home. We would have all our support. We would go down in history, that we'd win the World Cup for the second time in history. And all of a sudden, the energy in the room changed. And the simple question was asked, well, which one should we focus on? Should we focus on what if we lose? Or should we focus on what if we win? And just in that little shift, all of a sudden they became winners because now you could put into place. It's like your motivation is like, hey, what if I win this damn thing? When times got tough, what if we, and the final went down to the wire. And it's pretty controversial. There's plenty of people think the All Blacks should have lost that. But there was almost just this inevitability that they were going to get that, as opposed to previous World Cups where it was like, hey, man, they're going to probably choke here and come up short. So, from my personal standpoint, you look at someone like the culture, say the United States, and that winning mentality. Ultimately, you look at their culture and they are not looking at what if I lose this thing. They look at what if I win? What if it's me? What if we come back? What if we do this? I always felt like as a New Zealander looking at Australia, that Australians had that over us. They were always like, what if we win this thing? But as time's gone by and as I've lived in this culture and watched their tall poppy syndrome get even worse, I've watched the same pattern happen. I feel like now, it's much harder to find the teams that are the killers. You look at the Wallabies, they're just They don't have the fight or the grit that people like, George Gregan used to have, or the John Eales, these legends of the past. If you ask any of those guys at any point in the game, like, what are you focusing on here? They're like, hey man, what if we win this darn thing? What if we turn this bloody thing around and win this? There would be no backing down. No backing down. We love to hate George Gregan, but we respected him as a fighter, because you knew it was like, this guy's not going to give you an inch. And like Australian fans might say, hey, you're full of shit, what do you know? But results do speak for themselves. So I think if you could watch the culture shift, you'll know. If a winning culture comes back, that'll be it. It's what if they win? So number 4, what do these elite athletes and successful business people do? Well, they always find a way to turn negatives into a positive. And I always speak about Michael Jordan with this one. Michael Jordan growing up was the guy that everyone wanted to be like. And then I find it funny now that, the documentary, The Last Dance, comes out, and everyone's like, wow, he just finds a way to take something personal. And I look at that and laugh, because yes, Michael Jordan's always looking for that edge and something to get himself up. But it's to get himself up for competition. It's to switch that competitive drive on in him. It's not, though, that he's looking at the whole world as like, I hate this, I'm angry all the time. It's quite the opposite. And the thing that I never miss, and what he has said over and over again in his family, both his mother and father, always taught him how to turn a negative into a positive with every situation. That mentality that Michael Jordan had, arguably the strongest competitive, everyone says mindset, I hate that word, but mindset that's ever lived. If you had somebody saying, right, I want to have someone playing a game of one-on-one and my life depends on it, I don't know. I know there's a lot of LeBron fans out there, but I'd be putting Michael Jordan up there for myself. Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, hands down, I'd be wanting them to be playing for my life because of that mentality that they had. And it's not because it's this negative one that they're, I've got to take it personally, I'm just playing against you. It's more than that. It's more than that. They have, the way they're looking at the world is, it's all possibility. What if I can turn any situation around? I've got life working for me. I haven't got life working against me. That's a different beast. And you can look at that in particular with successful business people. Anyone that's going to go for anything great, they have hurdles that are the average person would find like insurmountable. They're just huge. These individuals always find a way to push through that. Do you really think it's this motivation that I've got to be the man, and that motivation runs out really quickly? It's not about that. It's a bigger picture. The way they look at the world is all possibilities. And it's the ability, anytime some tough things happen, they switch that into a positive and they figure out how life is working for them, not how life is happening to them. So let's recap these top 4 things that elite athletes and business people have over normal people. So number 1, they realize that their word shapes their reality. Number 2, if they tell themselves they are going to do something, they do it. Number 3, they never ask themselves the question, what if I lose? It's always, what if I win? And number 4, they turn a negative into a positive. Have a look at these areas in your own life. See if you can relate to these things as something that you possess or you don't possess. The key thing I want you to take away from it is you have access to these things. But what you have to do is you have to consciously bring them into your awareness and to program them into the way you do things. It's your behavior over a long enough period of time that starts to shift that subconscious. It's not a switch that you can flick. It's behavior over a long enough period of time that alters that. Once that behavior shifts for long enough, your brain looks at the world through a different lens, and you'll never look back. You can't unsee that. You can't take those pair of glasses off once you have them on now. So to an extent, get excited, because there is this ability to shift these things. All of these areas I started to bring into my life. I couldn't be an athlete anymore but it's your ability to bring it into other areas of your life that has you start to win. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope you take these things on and bring them into your own life. If you have any questions or you got any comments, please pop them in down below. I'm happy to answer them back to you, or we can talk about it on another podcast. But for now, it's bye from me.